So that takes us through step 4, the direct fire plan. The direct fire plan is only one of the instruments in our orchestra. The next one we need to think about is our obstacle plan. So the most common obstacle you'll have at the platoon level will just be C-wire. There are 3 types of wire obstacles you can have. You have protective obstacles, tactical obstacles, and supplementary obstacles, or supplementary, tactical, and protective wire obstacles. So let's take a look at each one. Our protective wire is exactly as it sounds. It's usually just outside of hand grenade range to protect the fighting position. So when the enemy is coming up towards it, they're going to have to make it through that wire somehow. So as they're caught up in that last final protective wire, we're engaging them so that we can destroy the enemy before they get into our fighting positions. That's why you want it far enough out so they can't be held up on the wire and just sit on the other side of the wire and throw grenades into your holes. Tactical wire accomplishes a tactical task in the engagement area. So we see out here we have some tactical wire on the PDF from the machine gun, and then some more tactical wire next to it. What tactical tasks can they accomplish? They can fix, turn, block, or disrupt. So specifically, this tactical wire that's on the PDF of the machine gun, we're trying to fix the enemy with that wire. So they get caught up in it and are just sliced apart by the machine gun. You might have been thinking, isn't that wire to block them? It takes a significant amount of wire assets to actually block, to accomplish the tactical task of block with wire. For some more specific wire construction and like how much wire you need for what, you can see that in McWhip 3Tech 17 Alpha engineer field data. Our supplementary wires are catch-all. So we've got our protective wire, that's the actual spot close into the holes that the engaging area commander or the unit commander is responsible for replacing their protective wire. Then you might want to use your combat engineer assets to replace your tactical wire, or at least advise in their replacement. Our supplementary wire is our catch-all. We're using it to disguise the purpose of our other wire and just aid in our overall obstacle plan. So the key to a good obstacle plan isn't just throwing wire out there because it looks like a good spot. All wire has to be covered by fires or at the very least observation. If you have wire out there in the woods and no one's looking at it because you're thinking, oh, I'll put it as a part of my deception plan, they'll see wire in the woods and they'll think we're right over there and they'll tie them up or confuse them. If no one is watching the obstacle, it's not really doing much for you because the enemy can breach it at their leisure. So the main purpose of the obstacle plan is to integrate with the direct fire plan and the indirect fire plan to accomplish an effect against the enemy. When we're planning our obstacle plan, we have to think, how is this tied in with the direct fire plan? Is it tied in with a machine gun PDF like the one example we have? Is it tied in with an indirect fire target? All of it is a part. Remember, this is just another piece, another instrument in our song. So let's look at that fire support plan. How do we plan and integrate it in with the direct fire plan and the obstacle plan? So with our long-range fires, these are forward of the engaging area. We're decided to create confusion, cause the enemy to deploy early. With our close-in fires, they're targeting the enemy in the engaging area prior to reaching the trigger line for the final protective fires. These mass fires should canalize the enemy, slow them, as well as disrupt enemy breaching elements. And finally, we have the final protective fire. So this is it. Final protective fire is either going to be the Hail Mary pass, trying to get us out of a jam, or the nail in the coffin for an enemy unit. Final protective fires are registered. So what that means is you, no kidding, shoot rounds and adjust to make sure they land exactly where you want them, because they're going to be pretty close. So you want to make sure that they land exactly where you want them, because as we mentioned, when you need them, you're really going to need them. The size of your FPF is going to depend on the unit that's shooting for you. So remember, in the scenario, we have a section of 81s, so 4 tubes of 81s that are going to be firing for a final protective fire. And when they get the call to fire, this is the priority target in the defense. So that mortar section is sitting in its mortar firing position, laid in on the data to shoot the final protective fire at all times, unless there's another mission they need to shoot. And when they get the call to fire it, they're going to throw everything they've got in that mortar position down the tube to get you out of the jam that you're in. With all these fires, they're most effective when they're tied in with our overall plan. So we talked about trigger lines earlier and how they relate to engagement criteria and target precedence. Remember, we're building the whole song of the engagement area. So we want to make sure we get our bass drum in there when we need it, and it's not just playing. So with our fire support plan, let's first talk about the long-range fires. So we've zoomed out a little bit from just the engagement area. You can see over in the forest, we've got our LPOP out as our observer. Remember, you can't have fires without an observer. So we're going to need to think about how are we going to observe our long-range fires. It's most likely going to be a patrol or an LPOP. So we have our target out there so that when the enemy approaches, thinking about the MLCO we came up with for them, that they're going to guide along that stream and use it to handrail right into Kansas City, we've been placing LPOP to watch that avenue of approach. And when they see them start coming towards us, we can cause them to deploy early and get inside their OODA loop, hit them with some long-range fires. As we get a little closer, now we can start talking about close-in fires. So remember when we went back again to that MLCOA, they're most likely going to use an assault position a little bit to the northwest, supported by a fire element. So when you're conducting your planning, think, if I was the enemy and I was attacking this position, where would I put my support by fire element? That's a good spot for a close-in target. So when you see the enemy occupying that position, you've got fires on call to disrupt their effort to put you in a combined arms dilemma. And then lastly, we've got our final protective fire. So again, it's tied in with our machine gun PDF, and it's also on that fixing obstacle that we talked about earlier when we were discussing wire obstacles. Even look over at our close-in target. Again, it's on a trigger line. We have some supplementary wire and the end of that fixing wire, that fixing tactical wire, so that the target isn't just out there. It's reinforced with our direct fire and obstacle plan, just like our final protective fire. We don't want any of our instruments playing solos. We want everyone playing together on one sheet of music. Another part to note with the final protective fire is when you register it. So we mentioned we're going to actually shoot it. So adjusting fire on Alpha Juliet 2204 to ensure that the rounds are landing exactly where we want them. So think back to the two methods of adjust that we can do. Are we going to be doing bracketing? Most likely not. We're going to be doing creeping to adjust the FPF. Start out at the edge of your observation, so drop it on out here, and then creep it on in until it's right in where we want it. How close can you get with the FPF? How close do you need it? If you look at the J-fire, there are things called risk estimate distances, and you can get pretty close depending on how far away the fire support asset is, what particular asset is it, but you can get pretty close in terms of your final protective fire. So now let's move on to that last step, the critically important step of rehearsals. So we've got our full defensive position planned out and ready, our LPOP's on out there. They see that enemy position coming. So what do we have in place to cause the enemy to deploy early? Our long-range fires. So we hit that enemy platoon with Alpha Juliet 2201 and begin forcing our will on them. They wanted to go and use that stream, but We hit them with the IDF target, cause them to redirect. They choose to go through the tree line and end up hitting the edge of our engagement area, right out at trigger line red. So now we see they're at we're zoomed in a little more at trigger line red. You can see those 3 squads that occupied the platoon down there, right at the trigger line. Think back to when we were talking about direct fire plan. What were 249s doing at trigger line red? That's right, they were opening up at the sustained rate. What was their target precedence? Enemy machine gun positions, fire team size are larger. I'd say 3 squads as fire team size are larger. So you don't need to do anything at this point, platoon commander. You're hitting all of, you're controlling this defense from in that command post without even saying a word, because we had good engagement criteria and target precedence briefed up front, tied in with some trigger lines on the deck, and good trigger information in the TT load act for that long range target. And the song is starting, the music is building as the enemy come on in. What else do we have down there right at trigger line red? We had another target trying to cause confusion, canalize the enemy, and disrupt their breaching forces. So that enemy sort by fire unit moves forward, and where have they moved? Right onto TRP2. So they're fixed in place by the edge of that obstacle in the center of 2 different weapons PDFs, right in the heart of the engaging area. So we've got our direct fire plan going with those machine guns, and our obstacle plan going as they're pinned in between that tactical wire from fixing along the PDF and some supplementary wire we have down there reinforcing that obstacle. Their maneuver element tries to begin their assault, heads out past TRP1, over triggerline white, past triggerline blue, and into our next fixing obstacle. So where are they positioned right now as they're trying to breach that wire? So for one, they're in the center of 2 different squads, sectors of fire, with another machine gun that was just ripping at them. But that's right, they're right in the center of our FPF. So as they're trying to deploy, figure out a way to get through that wire and get past the hail of gunfire coming at them from the little saddle that we're occupied on, we call in steel rain, and that FPF target starts blowing to pieces. And again, if we had good engagement criteria, target precedence tied to some trigger lines, some TRPs to facilitate communication and distribution of fire across the engagement area, the only thing you'd have to say as the platoon commander during this entire engagement we just walked through would be fire target Alpha Juliet 2204, because you have the cord running from your brain to your Marine's trigger fingers laid out from the order. So this is what we started with when I brought you back in after you did your own TDG, you came up with your own plan. This is the picture that we were looking at, minus the enemy, of course. So it doesn't look so daunting now, right? Follow the 7 steps of engaging area development, and you will plan a effective, well-integrated defense. So now that we've talked about how to plan it, let's go into how to actually conduct our defense. So first, we're going to do an order. We teach TDUTs to brief the correct elements of a defensive scheme maneuver here at the basic school. The first T is the type or method. So in our case, we are conducted an area type defense utilizing the battle position method. Next is distribution of forces, same as in the offense. Main effort, however many supporting efforts supporting that main effort. Followed by our orientation. It's pretty awkward when you set up your defense oriented the wrong way and then the enemy comes from behind. How are we going to occupy? We've heard several different times at the POI about how we occupy ambush positions, square fire locations, PLDs. We use the same 3 methods to occupy a defensive position. So those first 4 parts of TDUTs we'll probably get through pretty quickly when we're briefing. TCMs is where we're going to expand a little bit more. We're going to go over what's the plan for the defense. So first off, how are we getting there? Where's the ORP going to be? to set the leader's recon. Then for the actual engagement area itself, how many trigger lines are we planning on using? You obviously aren't going to know what the terrain features look like, micro detail out on the deck, but we can have a plan for TRPs. What is the engagement criteria for the trigger lines that we're using? So the plan for the engagement area itself. And then the next S is the security plan. So from how long are we going stand to when we occupy the defensive position, to what's the plan for using LPOPs, patrols, and then when are we going to 100% security, when are we dropping down to 25%. Just like all the other operations we've been talking about here in the platoon package, a leader's recon is going to be critical. So when do I do it? Ideally, we do it before the order so we can have lots of impeccable detail in that operations order about, yes, there are going to be exactly 5 TRPs because that's how many I saw out there. We're not always going to have the time to do that, though. Here at TBS, all of your defensive operations, you will be conducting your order prior to doing your leader's recon. You'll be doing whatever map or imagery reconnaissance you can beforehand, but you won't be seeing the actual ground on the deck till post-order. So who should I bring with me? You probably want to go as well, maybe a Marine or 2 for security. Who else? Maybe the main effort squad leader. Think to your plan about how you're going to occupy. Are there any critical personnel in terms of guides or marks that I want to bring with me? If I have any attachments, such as machine guns or missiles or engineers, I might want to bring one of those unit leaders with me so that they can give me their subject matter expertise about how their particular capabilities can be leveraged in my plan. Once we're actually on the leader's recon, what are we looking for? So if you've ever gone to the grocery store with no shopping list and an empty stomach, you've probably come home with a case of beer and a bunch of microwave pizzas. And then when you actually look at the list when you get home and realize, oh man, we've been out of milk for 2 weeks. So what are my priorities? Come up with that list beforehand and then go to the store and get the list. It's a little different than an offense leader's recon in terms of there's no actual enemy position we're looking to confirm or deny. What we're looking for is, based on the no-kidding ground that we're now looking on, does that match the assumptions I've made about the enemy? Is this an actual good avenue of approach for them? Does this match with what their mission is? If that spot we picked for that looked great on the map isn't good in real life, then it's not worth occupying. Because even though we might have the best plan ever, if the enemy is not going to come through that area, or if that terrain is of no value to the enemy, and we're trying to block or deny them from something, then we're in a useless spot. We can look at the engagement area itself, maybe head on out and look at the prospective defensive position from the enemy's point of view out in the engagement area, and figure out our direct fire plan. How are we going to in place our squads and our attachments? If we've got some machine guns, where are they going to go? And then where the squad's going to go to really put our defensive position together. Now you can basically map out the entire defense if you wanted to, leaving marks or Marines as guides on the whole thing, but we have to keep time-space considerations in mind. How long do I have before I need to be occupied in this position? How long is it going to take to get the platoon up here and occupy? Generally speaking, once we hit that 70% solution that you've all heard so much about, we're good, and we can figure out the rest of the details once we get everybody up and in position. So we're going to issue whatever refinements we've made in that leader's recon to the platoon, whether that's us returning to the ORP and doing it face-to-face or over the radio to pull the platoon forward. Because what we've came up with in the order may not match reality on the ground anymore, so we need to change perhaps where the defense is, either a big adjustment or a small adjustment, as in we're going to be on the forward slope of this hill as opposed to the rear slope, or we're going to be on the next terrain feature forward in the battle area. Maybe the occupation plan needs to change. We took too much time on our leaders recon, and now we need to be ready for contact as soon as we occupy. We'll brief all this to the Marines again, either in the ORP after we head back in person or over the radio as we pull the platoon on up. So when we pull the platoon up, we're going to occupy the defense. And we have the same 3 methods that we've been talking about throughout the entirety of the platoon package. One thing that I think bears noting here is the Marines are going to be bringing all kinds of stuff on up. When you occupy the defense here at TBS, you're going to have your main packs. You're going to have sandbags. You're going to have C-wire. You're going to have 201 Bravo antennas. You're going to have a lot of stuff. So your unit is going to be very vulnerable as you conduct that most likely slow movement up into your position. So you need to have a good plan for how this is going to work. And that plan is more than just we're going to use the crow's foot method or we're going to use the Bentel method. Are we going to employ any markings to help the squads know this is my squad sector, this is your squad sector? Are we going to use guides maybe so that they can grab that first Marine of first squad and walk them to where they're going to go? We want to have a deliberate plan because the last thing we want is all the Marines standing chest to main pack to the Marine in front of them wondering where they're supposed to go, being a very, very large target for an enemy force that could be upon us. It's a deliberate action and it requires some specific consideration on your. Once we get in the position and get those main packs down, we're going to need to get into security. So I was just talking a second ago about how it's a very vulnerable spot, right? So we need to be ready to immediately repel contact if someone saw the massive signature of our platoon occupying the position. How long are we going to stay at that initial stand to? Until you have a good feeling that no one's watching you, you're ready to go, ready to start your priorities of work. So let the birds start chirping again, give it 15, 20 minutes until it's clear that nobody saw us. Hey, we're ready to begin our priorities of work. So the priorities of work includes the security plan here. So the first part is that alert status. So we were just at stand 2 when we got into position. When else are we going to go to stand 2? If you look back for Robert's Rules for Ranging, from Robert's Rules for Rangers in 1763, they go stand 2 at dawn and dusk because that's what the French and Indians attack. Military units in the United States have been doing that pretty much ever since. Those are very vulnerable times. So there are times when patrols are coming in and out, or when LPOPs are coming in and out. Maybe we want to go stand 2 so that when the signature of someone leaving the battle position, we're ready in case someone detects that signature. The key point here is we are continuously providing security for ourselves. And I'm going to talk a little bit more in detail about patrols and LPOPs. But for the alert status itself, we always are maintaining all around security local to the battle position so we don't get surprised. For the overall security plan to encompass the patrols and LPOPs, we're trying to get them to culminate into that engagement area. We're attriting them, we're making contact with them early and attriting them throughout the battle so by the time they're actually in the engagement area, feeling the combined effects of our direct fire plan, obstacle plan, and indirect fire plan, they've already had a significant amount of their combat power reduced. But our patrols are a key part of that security plan. So just like you received at patrol FEX, you as the platoon commander owe the patrols you're going to push out of your defense a clear task and purpose. You're not just going on a walk for woods with each other, you're going out to accomplish a specific objective for the commander. The patrol can do a lot. A patrol that's out there looking to hunt and inflict their will on the enemy can roll up on that leader's recon, the enemy leader's recon, when they're trying to get eyes on the battle position and potentially kill the enemy platoon commander or cause significant chaos and friction, disrupting that enemy scheme and maneuver. So you always got to be thinking of that ambush mentality when you're out there. So turn the map around. If I was the enemy, what spots would I look for to move through? What is some good terrain for ORPs, for support by fire positions? It's starting to get dark. Maybe I want to go look for good PLD positions near my battle position to see if they left any marks. How are they going to get into my defensive sector? Where are avenues of approach in the AO? Maybe I can post up on one of them and conduct an ambush of opportunity if an enemy force moves through. Even though the platoon itself is in a static position, entrenching, our patrols are out there checking dead space. What spots can we not see from the battle position that the enemy could use as an assault position, as a 4x fire cold position? Have patrols sweep through those periodically so that if there's someone who's been waiting, lurking down in that defilade where we can't see them, we're flushing them out, finding any enemy units in and around the battle position. There is some defense-specific patrolling considerations to take into account, especially once we get the obstacle plan in. Where you leave the defensive battle position is going to matter. We'll use these things called passage points so that there's a specific spot where this is where patrols come in and out of so they don't get tangled up on our own obstacle plan. Do we have good communication and near-far recognition signals so that when we're in the defense and we see someone coming towards us, we can identify, is that a patrol or an enemy that's meeting one of my engagement criteria at my trigger line? Because the last thing we want to have happen is a patrol stumble into the engagement area and a motivated Marine who's following their engagement criteria cause fratricide because a patrol got lost or we didn't plan for how that link up was going to look. And then specifically, if the patrols are running around out there and have no ability to communicate back to the platoon commander, they're not doing as much as they could for us. So we're going to lose comm as we're moving around in the complex terrain that is Quantico. Do we have a good no comm plan? Are we reporting when we are able to? And that good no comm plan, when we lose it on patrol, what are we going to do? Because the last thing you want to be is the platoon commander sitting at your CP looking at your mapping, man, I haven't heard from my patrol in 3 hours. They're either still out there or they've been dead for 2 hours and 55 minutes, and the enemy's been gaining advantage on me this entire time. Thinking through all these coordinating instructions so that the patrols can do the most for you that they can. So the patrols are conducting reconnaissance out there. They're conducting, route reconnaissance of areas in towards you. Maybe they're conducting some other security patrols or ambushes for you. You need to be checking the dead space in and around your battle position frequently to make sure that there aren't enemy units lurking in there where they could quickly launch an attack against you. Your LPOP's out there doing some surveillance for you. So they are owed a task and purpose just like any Marine that you would give a mission to. Some of the best LPOPs I've seen here as an instructor is when they were given clear task and purpose, went out and executed with a clear understanding of how they fit into the whole. The worst ones is when they were just told, hey, go be an LPOP, and then 2 Marines were just sitting in the crook of a log, eating MREs, off by themselves in the woods. They're out there to accomplish something for us. Let's tell them what that is. So I talked about surveillance, observe and report. They're out there looking at something for you. So what are they looking at? We talked about the first step of engaging area development, all avenues of approach. So where there's the one avenue approach that we're banking the enemy on, what about the other ones? Maybe we want some early warning on the avenue of approach that we anticipate the enemy on so we can employ some of our long-range fires. If there are a couple viable avenues of approach in our AO, maybe I want a LPOP watching one consistently because that's tied to a decision point for me. If the LPOP1 sees an enemy coming on this alternate avenue of approach, that gives me, commander, time to adjust my least engaged unit into a supplementary position so that when the enemy thinks that they're attacking our flank, they're just attacking another front of the defense. I talked about dead space with patrols. Maybe there's one particularly egregious piece of dead space in and around our battle position, and we want to keep continuous eyes on it. For our long-range fires, our LPOBs are going to be the primary observers for those long-range targets. If patrols are in the area, they can do them as well. But if think back to our rehearsal example, our LPOP was out there watching the primary enemy avenue of approach with a pre-planned target, so that if the enemy came towards them and hit a certain trigger, a good defined trigger, we could call that target and inflict our will on the enemy early and push them into the engagement area. So using the LPOP as depth. Got to think about some considerations when we send them out there. We talked a lot about where are we putting them? What decision point is that tied to for you as the commander? What are we giving them? Do they have to have a radio? If they're going a couple train features away from you, they probably should. But military units have been using LPOPs or picket lines since long before we discovered the radio. How are we emplacing them so that they can give us early warning and tell us about the enemy scheme of maneuver? And when they encounter that enemy scheme maneuver, what are they doing? Are they going to try to be all vegged up like we see the Marine in the picture? Are they going to try to stand and fight? Probably not a good idea if it's just the 2 Marines against a whole platoon coming towards them. They should have their own engagement criteria for what they should do if they become compromised. Rounding out our security plan is the alert status, which I spoke to a little bit earlier. So we're going to stand to immediately upon occupation, and then when do you think are other good times to go stand to based on your analysis of the enemy threat? And then at what level are you going to set our alert status? So everybody on there, 3 out of 4 Marines, half. We have to think, there's a lot of things we got to do in the defense. We have to dig our fighting positions. We have to emplace marks. We got to put C-wire out there. We have to go on patrol, put out LPOPs. Managing our troop to task that Sergeant Charlie is going to talk about in the second half of this is vital. So part of the reasons of having good depth forward with patrols and LPOPs is it lets us know what the enemy is doing, so we know exactly how much risk we can assume back in the battle position to accomplish some other priorities of work. And also, we're going to need a rest at some point. Defenses can last days, months at a time. So when we get down to nighttime, what level are we dropping it to? If we just drop it down to 25%, we'll still have all of the defense covered, except for when that Marine is going to need to go to another fighting hole and wake up the person who's going to be relieving them. How much does your unit need rest? Maybe it's better to switch to 50% so that each fighting hole is awake at night, and then when it's time to wake their buddy fighting hole up, one Marine can crawl over and wake them up and come back. Again, these are all decisions for you to make based on your estimation of the risk that your unit is facing. So the first portion of this class is we went over the characteristics of the defense, preparing to fight the defense, and execution of the defense. As you've probably noticed, there's a lot that goes into it. So here are some references that you can consult to help you out. Specifically, those 2 at the bottom are the newest interim publications on the Marine Infantry Platoon and Marine Infantry Squad. Those are some great references, as well as the Infantry Company Operations publication as well. So this ends part 1. Please watch the Management of Defensive Operations by Sergeant Charlie next. Thank you.